Hello, welcome to this special broadcast from TV Estadão in collaboration with Deloitte Brazil. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We will explore the Circularity Gap Report Brazil, developed by Circle Economy in collaboration with Deloitte Brazil. This study measures for the first time the circularity of Brazilian economy. Only 1.3% of all materials in Brazil come from recycled sources. This is far below the global average. Meanwhile, each person consumes 20 tons of resources per year, well above the sustainable limit. Much of this comes from agriculture, food production, and sports. These numbers shows Brazil heavy reliance on virgin resources, but they also reveal potential for sustainable change. Brazil stands out in employment within the renewable energy sector, yet circular jobs remain relatively low. With its first national circular economy strategy now in place, the question is, can Brazil move from an extractive model to a circular and sustainable future? Let's discuss all these points with Maria Emilia Perez from Deloitte Brazil and Andrew Kiss from Circle Economy. Thank you both for being here today with us. And let's start talking about overview and structural risks. Andrew, the Circularity Gap Report Brazil reveals a circularity index of only 1.3%, significantly below the global average of 6.9%. From the report's findings, what are the primary drivers behind this low circularity? And, in your vision, what are the key risks Brazil faces due to its heavy reliance on virgin resources? Welcome.
Thank you. Well, in terms of primary drivers, there are two main reasons behind this low level of circularity. Overconsumption being the first, coupled with a low recycling rate. So in terms of overconsumption, in 2023, each person in Brazil used around 20 tons of materials on average, which is well above the global average of 13 tons, and more than double what is deemed a sustainable level of around 8 tons per person. So altogether, this represents a material footprint of around 4 billion tons, showing how strongly the Brazilian economy relies on virgin material use. And on the other hand, there's a lack of recycling infrastructure. So Brazil treated around 600 million tons of waste in 2023, but only 7.2%, around 40 million tons, was recycled. So nearly half of all waste is processed within formal systems, but 90% of this still goes to landfill. So this points to gaps in recycling and waste recovery infrastructure. Most materials are being discarded rather than circulated back into the economy. So in short, Brazil's circularity stems from too much materials going into the economy and not enough coming back out for reuse. Now, when we look at the risks that comes with the heavy reliance on these virgin resources, several stand out, both environmental and economic. So the first is rising material extraction. Without intervention, Brazil's material extraction is projected to increase by around 60% by 2060. So this means even more pressure on land, water, and ecosystems, and higher emissions tied to extraction and processing. Secondly is dependence on extractive industries. So much of Brazil's economy is comprised of resource-intensive sectors, such as mining and large-scale agriculture, and these generate significant material and carbon footprints. So this makes the country vulnerable to global shifts towards low carbon and circular models. Thirdly, environmental degradation from agriculture and mining. So industrial agriculture especially soy cultivation and cattle farming, continues to drive deforestation, which often results in biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation, and permanent land use change. Similarly, mining operations have expanded into forested and protected areas, and the associated infrastructure can increase the risk of water and soil contamination, as well as disruption to local ecosystems and communities. In terms of policy and governance gaps, Brazil's current sustainability policies face significant challenges, and without stronger governance, monitoring, and enforcement, the country is less likely to meet its 2030 climate targets. So persistent gaps in policy implementation and resource management means that emission reductions could fall short of the national goals if the action isn't strengthened in the near future. So in short, overall, the rising material extraction, increased environmental pressures, and gaps in governance could undermine the circularity efforts in Brazil unless the circular economy strategies are linked to these different priorities, such as biodiversity and social justice.
But Emilia, this data invites you to reflect on Brazil's economic model, especially its intensive use of land. Brazil's economy is land intensive historically, mainly due to agriculture. How does this model affect environmental sustainability, and what risks does it pose to food security and biodiversity? Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here today. Well, this question touches one of the defining features of Brazil's economy. It's a strong connection to land and natural resources. Brazil has built global leadership in agriculture and food production. This land-intensive model has been key to economic growth and to feeding both Brazil and the world. At the same time, as highlighted in the Circularity Gap Report, it's a model that relies heavily on virgin resources, about 5 billion tons of materials every year, with biomass accounting for 64%. Currently, only 1.3% of materials used in Brazil's economy are recycled or reused. These figures remind us that there is a great opportunity to use Brazil's resource more efficiently and to generate our natural capital. Over time, intensive land use can increase pressure on ecosystem and biodiversity, which are the foundation of food systems. But Brazil can act strategically. This dynamic can be turned into competitive advantage by adopting regenerative and circular bioeconomy models. Soil health can be enhanced, waste reduced, value can be created from agricultural residues, transforming byproducts into input for bio-based materials or renewable energy. Ultimately, it's about evolving from extraction to regeneration. And with Brazil's scale, innovation capacity, and also our rich biodiversity, we have everything we need to show that productivity and sustainability can grow together.
Nice. Andrew, going back to the report, food production stands out as the most resource-intensive system here in Brazil. Food production is Brazil's largest resource-consuming system, followed by manufactured goods and infrastructure. Why does it dominate the material and carbon footprint, and how can the supply chain become more sustainable?
Well, the food system includes crops and livestock used to produce food and drinks. And these typically have quite short life cycles. So the time between they're produced and we consume them is much shorter than many other products in other sectors. So a lot of materials go through the system each year. So in fact, the food system accounts for a material footprint of over 2 billion tons. And that's largely because of the huge amount of biomass produced within the country, so including sugarcane, soy, and crops for animal feed. It's also the largest contributor to Brazil's carbon footprint. So even though agriculture makes up only 4% of Brazil's GDP in 2019, it generates nearly half of national greenhouse gas emissions, showing the disproportionate nature between the environmental and economic impacts. So making the system more sustainable is crucial. Strategies such as some which Maria just mentioned include agroecology, regenerative agriculture, and dietary shifts, which can reduce emissions, restore soil health, lower pressure on land and water resources. And collaboration within regional industrial clusters can really help by linking the food processing sector with the agricultural sector through technologies such as composting, producing bioenergy, bio-based product producers that can exchange their products between each other. So closing loops, reducing waste, and really creating a more circular production system.
Maria Emilia, in the light of this scenario, collaboration between businesses and policymakers is essential to transform the entire value chains. Building on Brazil's unique economic characteristics, how can businesses and policymakers collaborate to transition entire value chains towards circularity? Furthermore, what opportunities do you see in structuring emerging circular value chains, particularly within the bioeconomy sector?
Great. So, as Andrew mentioned, and you also, collaboration is central to the transition, because circularity isn't something and anything a single actor can achieve alone. So Brazil's economy is diverse, land-based, and rich in natural capital. This gives Brazil an opportunity to design circular value chains rooted in the bioeconomy, in agriculture, forestry, and food system, but also connected to manufacturing, energy, and services. Businesses can bring innovation, technology, and the agility to redesign products and process. This is always key to make us go to the energy transition. So also policymakers can create enabling conditions through incentives, standards, collaboration that reward circular models and encourage long-term investments. That it's also a key point to all this transition to a low carbon economy. When these forces come together, transformation can happen at scale. That it's also a very important topic. For example, imagine linking farmers, biotechnology startups, logistic providers, and consumer goods companies to transform agricultural residues into bio-based materials, biofuels, packing, and renewable energy all together. That is a circular ecosystem in real action. So Brazil already has many of these ingredients: strong agribusiness clusters, scientific excellence, and a growing sustainability finance ecosystem. What is needed now is coordination, platforms that connect these actors, share data, and align priorities. Deloitte Brazil's experiences shows that when policy, innovation, and finance align around a shared vision, a systemic change can be unlocked. So ultimately, the bioeconomy can become Brazil's natural bridge between prosperity and sustainability. If we continue strength collaboration across the entire value chains.
Well, let's talk now with Andrew and Maria Emilia about fair transition and future opportunities. Andrew, beyond the environmental impacts, the report also highlights the social challenges of transitioning to a circular economy. Only 5.2% of jobs are linked to the circular economy, with major challenges in waste management. Which labor policies would help to ensure the transition creates inclusive, safe, and high quality jobs?
So I think Brazil would need several labor-related policies to help ensure the transition is both inclusive, safe, and also provides lots of high-quality jobs. So I think the country should integrate circular economy concepts into general education and expand the national climate curriculum to build foundational skills and environmental literacy from an early stage. Secondly, I think it's important to scale up informal worker integration models like catadores cooperatives by strengthening public-private partnerships and supporting business-led workforce transition programs. And finally, investing in initiatives such as supplier development programs and local training hubs can incentivize participation, as well as build regional capacity and foster collaboration across stakeholders at various levels of the value chain. So the topic of collaboration comes up again when we think of more the social labor market side of things.
Mhm. Maria Emilia, Brazil has just launched its national circular economy strategy. Which areas have the most potential for progress?
Yes, first of all, the launch of Brazil's national circular economy strategy in 2024 is truly a milestone. It gives the country a coordinated framework to guide circular transformation. There are three areas where I see potential for impact. First, the bioeconomy. With Brazil's rich biodiversity and strong scientific base, Brazil can become the global hub for regenerative value chains, from bioplastic and bio-based fertilizers to biofuels and circular food system. Second, manufacturing and infrastructure. Brazil still depends heavily on virgin materials, and industrial recycling rates remain low. By promoting eco-design, industrial symbiosis, and material recovery, companies can reduce waste and drive circular production, fostering a more resilient and competitive economy. And third, Brazil's cities. Urban areas are where circularity becomes tangible. Through better waste management, repair and reuse industries, new mobility models, and sustainable construction. Progress in these areas could depend on collaboration and alignment between government, industry, academia, and finance. The strategy creates a platform. The strategy is to create a platform for that coordination, and if implemented effectively, it can help position Brazil as a regional leader and global reference in circular transformation. Advancing these sectors can help raise Brazil's circularity rate, moving beyond today's 1.3% that we mentioned and toward a more regenerative, inclusive, and resilient economic model.
Andrew, Brazil extracts 5 billion tons of materials per year, with almost a third exported. How do these exports shift environmental impacts to the country, and what does it mean for Brazil in global supply chains?
Well, Brazil accounts for around 5% of global material extraction, with almost a third being exported out of the country. So it's really a global major supplier of various things such as metal ores, food, non-metallic minerals. So while these exports feed global supply chains, much of the environmental impacts from extraction are felt locally in the form of pollution, biodiversity loss, and carbon sink destruction. However, and at the same time, exporting raw materials can limit opportunities for domestic industrial development and value creation, since much of the processing and high-value manufacturing using these raw materials occurs abroad. So this means that Brazil often bears the environmental costs while not capturing all of the potential economic and social benefits.
Maria Emilia, for Brazil to move forward in this transition, financing is a key factor. Implementing a national circular economy strategy and transitional value chains requires significant investment. What role does the financial sector play in accelerating Brazil's circular transition, and what innovative financing mechanisms or investment opportunities are emerging to support all this shift?
Great. Finance is catalytic for circular transition. Moving toward a circular economy could require significant investment in infrastructure, innovation, and capability building. And the financial sector can enable that transformation. It's the basis for everything to happen. First, by integrating circular economy principles into sustainable finance frameworks, helping to ensure that green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, and other financial instruments actively support circular business models. Second, by developing mechanisms that can help mitigate risk in circular investments. For example, blended finance instruments, guarantee funds, or concessional credit lines can make it easier for small and medium enterprises to innovate. And third, by fostering data and transparency, investors and lenders increasingly seek metrics to understand the impact and value of circularity, and shared reporting standards can make these investments more scalable and credible. In Brazil, we are already seeing progress. Development banks, impact investors, and private sector institutions are funding waste-to-value projects, our circular agriculture, biofuels, and renewable infrastructure. When finance and sustainability move together, circularity can evolve from a concept into viable, investable reality, turning vision into lasting impact.
And to close our discussion, I would like to ask a question for both of you, starting with Andrew. Looking ahead, what is needed, Andrew, for Brazil not just to reach global circularity levels, but also to become a reference in this? What opportunities and risks lie ahead?
Well, looking ahead, achieving the level of global circularity in Brazil will require strong focus in a number of key areas. Firstly, policy and governance needs strengthening. So this includes establishing nationally aligned but locally tailored strategies. So embedding circularity into key policies, furthering the cross-sectoral governance, and supporting regional participation through long-term inclusive planning and capacity building. Secondly, more attention is needed on education skills and the workforce. So investments into regionally adapted education and training can integrate circular principles into general education, as well as formalize informal work where beneficial, and expand vocational programs through public-private partnerships with targeted support for underserved regions and sectors. Thirdly, industry, agriculture, and waste systems need further transformation. This involves building more and better industrial clusters, building upon the existing ones. And for example, adopting agroecological practices, upgrading waste and construction and demolition recycling infrastructure, since that marks one of the biggest waste streams, and fostering the collaborations to increase the material reuse and reduce the reliance on virgin resources and non-renewable energy. So there are significant opportunities, and given, as echoed at the beginning of this by Maria, given Brazil's ecological wealth with around 12% of the world's forests, large freshwater reserves, and a high level of biodiversity, these could be preserved through circular approaches. But at the same time, some risks remain, such as continued fossil fuel extraction predicted, and land use pressures. And these could deplete resources and increase emissions. But overall, I think Brazil has a lot that can be built on, whether from the infrastructure and the governance in place. It just needs a really strong will of the government and businesses alike to make it happen.
Mhm. And now I would like to hear Maria Emilia's insights, please.
Yes, and we agree with you. It's our time, it's our moment. So we do have a great opportunity in Brazil. We need to guarantee that it's all aligned for Brazil to become this. So answering to you, so for Brazil to become a global reference in circularity, challenge should be turned into opportunity for innovation and growth. Today, as we mentioned, only 1.3% of the materials in Brazil's economy are circular, which shows the potential to advance by closing the loops on Brazil's largest resource flows, biomass, minerals, and construction materials. Brazil can help reduce emissions, strengthen our industries, and create inclusive jobs, as we also mentioned. The opportunity lies in embedding circularity at the core of this economic planning and economic strategy of each one of our companies in the private sector as well. Not as a parallel agenda, but as a foundation for productivity and resilience. That means integrating circular principle into industrial policy, innovation ecosystem, education, and also procurement. Of course, there are risks. Every business, every opportunity, there is a huge risk behind as well. But we need to work on that and integrate it. If actions remain fragmented and short-term oriented, Brazil could lose this momentum. But the foundations are strong. Brazil has innovation capacity. We have abundant natural capital, growing sustainability finance mechanism as well, and engaged the private sector. We do have a strong movement in Brazil right now, bringing the private sector together, even within the discussions that we have around COP30 in Brazil. So by working together, I really believe and by investing in measurement, governance, and collaboration, as we mentioned here today, Brazil can move from ambition to execution, and we can demonstrate how emerging economy can thrive by regenerating rather than depleting its resources. So there is a huge opportunity, and I really believe that conversations like that and information, data, bringing data for us, it's really important, and that's the reason why we're working together with Circular Economy to try to bring the data that we need for Brazil.
The transition to a circular economy can reshape Brazil's future, reducing environmental impacts, strengthening supply chains, and creating new jobs and innovation. But success depends on strong coordination between government, the private sector, universities, and society. The challenge now is to turn goals into real results. Thank you very much to Maria Emilia from Deloitte Brazil and to Andrew Keys from Circle Economy for joining us today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.